The Oklahoma Sooners fall in demoralizing, disappointing, embarrassing, frustrating fashion to the Kansas Jayhawks. We'll talk about all of it that transpired on Saturday in Lawrence on today's episode of Locked On Sooners Postgame Live.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. If you're looking for last-minute tickets, go download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KREF Sports app. And Josh, man, what a game. I mean, if you're a neutral observer, you probably enjoyed that game. But for Oklahoma Sooners fans, it was an incredibly frustrating atmosphere and afternoon to watch football because at times it seemed like they were getting things going both offensively and defensively. And then at times it looked like they had no clue what they were doing, whether it was the play calling, whether it was in coverage, whether it was just the inability and unwillingness at times to throw the football. Nothing was great about this game. You can go to a number of moments that really turned the tide or lost the game for the Oklahoma Sooners. But just overall, where do you start when you're starting to think about what Oklahoma did in this game?
Got off to a poor start in a place where you knew it was sellout type crowd. Weather conditions weren't conducive to going and just making a bunch of explosive plays after explosive plays. It was going to be more challenging in some ways offensively to go find a 70-yard touchdown pass or, insert yardage here. And Oklahoma didn't try to do a lot of that, which of course we'll dive into as we move along throughout this post-game reaction. But got off to a bad start, and it was a three phases loss for me, John. I look at a number of different things. The offense, again, the play calling, we'll deep dive that, I'm sure. Defensively, the competitive depth that we've touted. Unfortunately, when you lost a couple of guys today, it wasn't as good defensively as we had hoped for. And really, there's been some signs of that these last couple of weeks for Oklahoma. And it finally, against a really good Kansas offense, came back to bite them, even though they came away with a timely turnover or two that kind of made you think in the moment, okay, they're going to find a way to escape and get out of here, get out of Lawrence with another win over the Jayhawks, but they just didn't have enough complimentary football. Special teams as well, right? Early in the game because of the conditions, but also because of your failures lately, you weren't comfortable kicking a field goal early in the game. So I just looked, you had the bad shanked punt in this football game. You had, obviously, it didn't wind up hurting you that much, right, on the kickoff return, but you, like Kansas, muffed a kickoff return. So there's just every single phase of the game, offense, defense, special teams, where, you lost this thing.
It was a disjointed effort from the very beginning. You can look at Dylan Gabriel's, pick six at the beginning of the game where he was just late on the throw. And I mean, had he timed that better, maybe he hits Jalil Farouk there on the outside. Also, Jalil Farouk, I didn't feel like made a very competitive play on that. He let the guy go through him and allowed that ball to be picked off. But still, it was a poorly timed throw. And after maybe the first series, you're thinking, okay, or the first throw of the game, maybe it's like, let's maybe not throw out to the perimeter very often in this game. And because they just didn't have it because of the conditions, but also, Gabriel just either didn't have a lot of opportunities to get into a rhythm, except for that final drive where he looked, pretty solid and moved Oklahoma into scoring territory and gave him an opportunity. But all in all, a lot of it was just some disjointed play calling. It seemed like they were really trying to attack the perimeters of the Kansas defense, but what really worked was going straight up the gut and attacking them between the tackles with Tawi Walker, who had a fantastic game. But where'd it go? where to go, in particular on their final drive, on the drive, before Kansas takes the lead. You get the ball back on an Ethan Downs interception, ball batted down at the line of scrimmage, and you do nothing with that drive. You just absolutely go in the tank and play scared and not to lose. There was so much time on the clock left. There was well over 2 minutes in the game, and Kansas had at least 2 timeouts. They might have had all 3. They had 2 timeouts, so much time. And you decide you're just going to try and run and get the first down and run the clock out. Okay, I get it. On first down, you want to try and make something happen there. But when you go backwards, then maybe on second down, you look to get a little bit of yardage back and you throw something safe. It doesn't have to be attack the middle of the field on a 40-yard bomb. No, just do something that's going to get the ball in a playmaker's hands and see if you can pick up some cheap yards and get into a better position to get a first down. But then that's, that second down, Dylan Gabriel draw play. I'm like, what are we doing here? And then on third down, you pick up some decent yards before you got to punt the ball away. So, it was just a poor effort. And I feel like they really played scared. They coached this game scared. To me, this reminded me a little bit of the Texas game, but the offense was better because you actually had a quarterback that could do a little bit. And the Texas defense was better than Kansas. And I mean the Texas game from 2022, not this recent Texas game, where the coaching staff went in there just hoping they could get out of it by not doing too much. Well, they took the ball out of one of their best players' hands. I know people are going to be upset with Dylan Gabriel in this game, but I feel like he could have been better had he been given an opportunity to do a little bit more. They were so afraid to throw the football in this one. And I get it. And the run game was working. So I don't mind that they were running the football a lot, but in critical moments, you got to let your quarterback throw the ball or just don't even have him out there.
Yeah, obviously in that situation, you just make yourself so predictable. And unfortunately, with the way this game played out for Oklahoma, maybe it's different. And maybe you successfully find your way into the winner's column and to the finish line if Tawee Walker's not dinged up at the end of the game, right? I mean, that's just unfortunately the wear and tear of this thing. I guess somewhere along the way, Tawee Walker hurt an ankle it sounds like the report. And so that's why we didn't see a lot of him coming down the home stretch. And so you tried to lean on obviously Barnes and your quarterback there, and it wasn't enough. Tawee Walker probably pinballs a couple of guys and maybe gets you in a situation where you can run 3 straight downs to go get a first down. But that wasn't your situation at the end of the football game. And even if it was, there's always going to be the faction of the fan base that understandably is upset that throughout the course of this game, Dylan Gabriel throws 19 times. And how many of those were, a couple of those, right, on the final drive there. So there was a large portion of this game where Dylan Gabriel just wasn't asked to throw the football downfield. Meanwhile, Bean in Kansas, they hit on some big time plays downfield. So there were plays to be had in the passing game, and Oklahoma didn't try to take that route, which at times the run game was the right decision. But throughout the course of this game, sure, the predictability, and especially at the end, man, you got Dylan Gabriel, you got those skill guys. Try and go win the football game when they've got a couple of timeouts in their pocket.
Yeah, especially if you don't have the guy that's been your best runner in the game. Maybe try and get something outside and get it wide. That's what Kansas did. Kansas played aggressive. They played to win the football game, and they won the football game, rightfully so. They were the better team. Even though Oklahoma gave them opportunities, Kansas was the better team because they coached more aggressively and they went out and won that game. That fourth down that they ended up completing that got them down inside the red zone. Jason Bean has all kinds of time, first of all. And second of all, the wide receiver loses coverage, and then everybody's out there just like waiting for him to do something, waiting for him to run out of bounds. But he's like, I'll take as many yards as you want to give me, I guess. And he's waiting for them to come tackle him, and they just let him keep running. And it was a very, very, there was very much a dichotomy in this game. Kansas was the aggressor from the jump. Oklahoma played passive, scared to lose football, and they lost the game. And they deserve to lose the game for that, in my opinion, because if you're not going to be the aggressor, Brent Venables, Jeff Lebby, Ted Roof, then you're going to lose football games like this. You are an aggressive coach. You've proven it over and over again, but came into this one just hoping Kansas was going to give it to you, and they didn't. And we've got so much more to break down in this one. We can talk more Jeff Lebby. We can talk about some of your comments, your reactions, your questions over in the YouTube chat as well. Thank you for joining us here on Locked On Sooners. We'll talk more about this game after the break.
Athletic Brewing Company is your game changer. Unfortunately for Oklahoma coming out of this, some might say Jeff Lebby was a game changer for OU. This is not that kind of game changer. This is a positive game changer. Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic brew game. They make non-alcoholic brews that actually taste good. Athletic Brewing Company, they make all sorts of different flavors for you. 50 different styles of craft non-alcoholic brews, including IPAs, golden, sours, and more. And they're constantly inventing, creating these great tasting, award-winning brews that beat out those full-strength beers in global competitions as well. So where can you find Athletic Brewing Company? You can find them all over at a store near you or buy online, athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use our code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Fit for all times.
And if you're looking for a way to find last-minute prices on last-minute tickets, go to Gametime. If you've ever had that frustrating buying experience where, hey, man, I really want to get to this game, I want to get to this show, but you can't find the best deals, well, go to the Gametime app. Not only will you get the best deals, but you get a great view of what your seat's going to be looking at. No matter the venue, the event, you'll be able to see it before you get there. And so you can check that out over at the Gametime app. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. The Gametime app is where it's at, available in your app store or the Google Play Store as well. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off that first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So in the second and third quarter, Josh, Dillon Gabriel was 8 of 8 in the game and was just 4 of 7 in the fourth quarter. But several of those completions on several attempts came on the final drive. You want to go back to the final drive? I think he threw six passes on Oklahoma's final drive of the game and was pretty good on those 6 passes. Again, they were reluctant to throw the football for much of the other moments in this game. I keep going back to their second to last drive. And why are we not trying to get something outside and see if you can't get Drake Stoops to pick up some cheap yards and get you in a better second or third down situation where you can then, again, run the football and see if you can pick up that first down. But again, it just came down to they had no faith in any part of their passing offense. And it was a frustrating thing to watch.
Yeah, obviously the conditions being what the conditions were, Oklahoma coached like that. They coached like at times they couldn't throw a forward pass. When you've got Dillon Gabriel and a bunch of talented weapons, I just don't understand it. It's time to start retiring too. Stop it with the Gavin Freeman end arounds. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of watching them. They rarely work. Speaking of predictability, everybody knows as soon as Gavin Freeman starts moving around the formation, you're handing it off to him on an end around. And guess what? It's probably going to lose 5 yards like it does most every other time.
Yeah, as good as he might have been in fall camp, we've yet to see that translate to the regular season. It just hasn't worked yet. And, you know, in today's or in this game, not really a lot of guys were getting a lot of separation. But again, you weren't giving the passing game a whole lot of options. You weren't giving them opportunities to throw the ball down the field. Whereas with what we considered a lesser quarterback in Jason Bean, may not be the case, but Jason Bean, they were very willing to throw the football down the field. Jeff Lebby just didn't scheme anything to get the ball downfield. You didn't target Nick Anderson enough. You didn't, get the ball outside down the field to Jalil Farouk or to Jaden Gibson. A few plays that worked were, just kind of here and there. It wasn't ever a consistent passing game that you had going on. And I just kind of put some of that on the game plan. I put some of that on, the play caller not really wanting to let his quarterback go downfield. I mean, so much of it is just scheme. Like I get, KC fan has it right here. He's saying you can still throw in the rain. It's more challenging, but not impossible. Kansas didn't. So why couldn't we? That's the big question that everybody's going to have on their mind is why didn't we attack down the field? Because eventually Kansas just started playing everybody up close to the line of scrimmage. And that was the case on that second to last drive for Oklahoma. I mean, there were so many bodies around the line of scrimmage. That's the perfect time to throw a little play action, a little RPO game. I don't know if I ever saw one actual RPO in this game. There might've been some play action stuff, but nothing that gave Dylan Gabriel the option to throw the slant, which had worked a lot this year, had been a very, very successful play design for them. You just didn't see much of it.
Yeah. The Jalil Farouk in the backfield thing, obviously you wind up with a big costly fumble, John. It's something actually at times, I don't want to say that you and I've called for, but with the running game being what the running game at times has been, we've said, okay, well, why not try a Farouk or this or that in the backfield? And obviously it did not work, and it winds up with one of the most costly plays in the game with Farouk getting hit and coughing the football up. So I think one other thing is true about this game today. We saw the effect on this football game once Tawi Walker went down, right? Oklahoma, even though there were some spurts last week to end with Gavin Sawchuk and to begin this week for Oklahoma, it's just not consistently there in the run game for anybody not named Tawi Walker. And so guess what? When Tawi Walker got hurt, Oklahoma didn't have many answers in the run game, and it wound up biting them to close this football game offensively, especially when you were trying to be overly reliant on the run game and a little bit too conservative. You didn't have the guy back there that maybe could go get you that first down. Incredibly frustrating when you look across the ledger and you see a Kansas team that has a Devin Neal and a Highshaw Jr., who, oh, by the way, was at Moore High School. Sure, people picked up on that on the broadcast, but right in your own backyard, you didn't recruit that kid. But basically, KU's got two guys better maybe than anybody you've got right now in the backfield. That's a tough pill to swallow coming out of this thing.
It really is. And it comes back to just the running game not being good enough all year long. And then when Tawi Walker, who's kind of been the only one that's gotten consistent work aside from Marcus Major this season, you don't have another option. And so then I come back to, why are you taking the ball out of Dylan Gabriel's hands and forcing the run when you don't have a consistent option for your offense? You just don't. And I mean, Dylan Gabriel was solid. Yeah, the pick six was terrible. Had a couple other throws that he would have liked back, but otherwise, what was he? 14 and 19 for 171. Complete 74% of his passes. I know a lot of those were at or behind the line of scrimmage, but there were good completions down the field too. So yes, it's raining. Yes, it's wet. Yes, there's some wind. Put the ball in your best player's hand and let him go win the football game. When he gave you an opportunity at the end, it's a little 20-yard Hail Mary that they had to throw. That should have been enough for you to say, man, I really wish I'd have let Dylan Gabriel throw the ball more throughout this game, because they might have given us more opportunities to score points. But we can talk about the offense, but the defense, it wasn't good either. Like, the defense was so up and down. It was inconsistent. There were missed tackles all over the place, whether it was Jaron Canick or Billy Bowman, Danny Stutzman. I mean, all the guys that you expect to be stars on this team were missing tackles. Key Lawrence had a dropped interception that was right in his hands. Ultimately, they were able to get the INT from Ethan Downs to make up for it, but you can't miss on plays like that. There were too many times where they were playing patty cake with the Oklahoma or with the Kansas runner or receiver that you're like, why are you trying to grab the ball when he's right there and he's already made several guys miss? Just tackle the guy. But so many times they were just trying to strip the ball out and force a turnover that it just was not good. And there's a lot of work to do with this defense still. There's a lot of room that they've still got to grow. And I said as much on Twitter just yesterday that this is a team that's shown signs that they're improved, and yet there's still a lot of signs that they've got a long, long way to go We've got a few more things to say about this. We'll do this after the break. If you got questions that you'd like us to answer, thoughts that you'd like us to share, make sure you drop them in the chat over there as well. But we'll talk more about Oklahoma's 38-33 loss over the Kansas Jayhawks after the break.
If you're looking to play daily fantasy sports, there's no better place than PrizePicks. It is the premier location. Testing my skills on PrizePicks this football season, it's been the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And oh, by the way, if you've got the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. It's really simple and easy to play. I can make my picks, submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Just look at some more than numbers, some less than numbers. Unfortunately, today, the less than passing yardage number for Dillon Gabriel was probably the right play in this one. But quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types to make PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. They've got something for everybody. So head on over to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use our code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. One more time for you, prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use our code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy.
Okay, Josh, I got a few questions here. I mean, we've talked a little bit about this, but 405 Boyd asked John and Josh, what happened to the offense?
It's a great question. The first thing that jumps out, obviously, is one big mistake early by Dillon Gabriel that sets the table for sort of everything to follow afterwards. Giving up 7 points. I said it going in, and this is not some wow, what a rocket science statement. But Oklahoma coming out of this thing, yes, was still the top to bottom better football team. The only way they were going to lose this game was if they didn't take care of the football. And guess what? They did not take care of the football, and it started early in the game. Even though Kansas tried to help you out in that department. But Oklahoma's offense, the big pick six, and obviously the Farouk fumble was a lot to overcome. And then the conservative play calling throughout the course of this thing, just basically thinking you were going to be able to only rely on the run game and go win it. It worked for, some legitimate stretches of this game, but eventually at the end of it, KU adjusted, John. You were too predictable. And the tweet that was out there, I'm going to see if I can't find it, about I think it was Mark Clayton that tossed it out, that it was cover 0 with just a robber up top. And it's basically was a crime against football. I'm adding my own subjective opinion here to Mark Clayton's tweet, but his point was you can't not throw the football on a cover 0 look. And yet Oklahoma came out 3 straight downs and ran the football. So that's a failure on the offensive play caller. And I think we did see that at times today.
Yeah, exactly. When the defense is giving you favorable looks, you got to try. You just have to. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And I get people be mad if it doesn't work out, but you got to try, especially when Tawee Walker goes down. You got to give yourself an opportunity to win the game. Throw it at Nick Anderson. Give him an opportunity. He had 1 catch today. 1 catch. That's not enough for a guy that's just been scoring a bunch of touchdowns, just had a 100-yard day. He's playing really, really good football, and you only target him twice? That's not good enough. That's really not good enough. Drake Stoops had a solid game, but in a losing effort, it's a frustrating one. You got to be able to do a little bit more offensively than what you did. And yes, the conditions played a part, but you can only use that excuse for so long.
Hey, you played in it.
Yeah. KU played in the same conditions, and they were not afraid to throw the ball. They let Jason Bean throw the ball 32 times in this game. Did it always work out? No. But when he needed to make a play, he had thrown the ball enough to feel good about making the play, and he made it. Yes, that could have gone a little bit differently, could have gone awry, but he made the play that they needed him to make at the right time. And so it's an issue. There's another really good comment up here from Thomas Slinger. He says, I actually think this game is on Brent. His time management, coaching discipline, and player management really showed today. It's on your head coach. Your head coach is the one that's most responsible for wins and losses. They're going to get all the credit when they're winning, get all the blame when they lose. And today it was poor game management. Before the half, Matthew Reddick says it here. The victory formation before half, that was an issue. We talked about it. 53 seconds, 3 timeouts. That's an eternity. You could take so much time if you start getting first downs, but they didn't try. They ran one play and then they kneeled on the ball. Not good enough for me. That is not good enough for me. And, a lot of it comes back to what Thomas said. You just didn't manage the clock very well. On that final drive, you got a big play and you were able to move the ball down the field, and then you didn't call a timeout right away. That cost you 3-4 seconds, maybe 5 seconds of game clock. So then when you throw that incompletion out of the back of the end zone with you only have 3 seconds left on the clock on that play, that's an extra play maybe. 5 seconds is potentially an extra play because you have an extra timeout where you can get the ball a little bit closer to the end zone. But because you didn't call the timeout that quickly enough, you lost time on that one. So yeah, this comes down to game prep, execution. It comes down to game management, which I thought Brent Venables had done a really good job of this year, but this one was not a good coaching job for him or his coaching staff.
No, that's right. And if we're going to be upset with Jeff Lebby, which I think is totally merited and completely deserved, Brent Venables is the head football coach. He gets the final say. So if he wants to say, look, we're going to stop running the football and being so predictable, and we're going to open it up and give Dillon Gabriel a couple of chances here to go make plays, Brent Venables has the wherewithal as your head football coach to do that. But obviously we're talking mostly about, some of the before first half thing. It's a hindsight 2020 for me. I, in the moment, wasn't too upset that you didn't go try to chase points. Given the way that the game had started out, falling behind 14-0, it was a pretty good situation to be in going into halftime leading. So I can understand if you didn't break one off with the initial run there, not trying to be over aggressive, but at the end of the game is just inexcusable. And I'd like to watch that again to see. I'm going to assume that Brent Venables and his staff just made a mistake and let 4 or 5 seconds drip off the clock before they called the timeout, or didn't think about, okay, do we want to call a timeout here? They clearly, I guess, thought it was a first down, John, which it was not. And then obviously you let multiple seconds tick away. It leads to where right before that final play, you call timeout to make sure that everything's set up the way that you want it. But really, you could have kept that timeout in your back pocket, kept the middle of the field open, tossed something to the middle of the field, and then maybe we're talking about 12 yards to the end zone or 8 yards to the end zone. And then instead of 8 guys dropping back, it turns into a traditional football play instead of obviously the way KU was able to defend it. So no, there were mistakes made by the head football coach, and I would entertain the argument, again, hindsight being 2020 with the not being aggressive before half, the conditions, the way the first half had played out. I'm going to give Brent a little bit of a pass there, but the end of the game and some of the decisions along the way, other ones, obviously inexcusable, a failure by your head coach.
Yeah, the only reason I'm so frustrated by the end of the first half play calling is you ran one play and it wasn't even a great play. It was just a halfback dive. Get the ball out on the perimeter and see, like, Tommy Walker's good. And yeah, he did have a couple big runs, but he's not going to be somebody that breaks off a 50-yard run and puts you in field goal range. No, like, get the ball to somebody that's got a little bit of speed, a Brennan Thompson, a Jaquays Petaway, somebody that's going to be able to make something happen after the catch and then get down the field. And there's so much to dissect from this game. And I think we'll have to go back and watch some of it because there's so much to dissect from this game, but we'll break it all down this week over the first few days before we start getting ready for Bedlam next Saturday against a game Oklahoma State team all of a sudden.
Before we, call it a day or anything, what is next for Oklahoma? Because I think a couple of things are fair. Number one, and we've dissected this thing left and right, up, down, and we'll continue to do so, I'm sure, all week until we see this team play football again. But Jeff Lebby, the offense, clearly some issues in the play calling department. And these are not new. This has been going on for a little while. And yet Jeff Lebby in Oklahoma has been undefeated to this point. The need to run some of the sideline to sideline stuff with Freeman and whoever, just be more basic at times. Stop being so cute with the offense. But defensively, is Oklahoma headed the wrong direction? Somebody asked the question earlier, is this and I'm sorry that I don't have it in the chat in front of me. Somebody asked the question earlier, is this thing about to go up the rest of the way for Oklahoma or down the rest of the way for Oklahoma? And I think that's really right. The big picture question coming out of this for OU is that it's easy to say after a loss, but John, there have been signs coming out of the Texas game that things are not trending in the right direction for OU. Defensively, this is not headed in the right direction. They didn't handle the injury bug well today. So, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about what's next for Oklahoma. I hope they can right the ship next week in Bedlam. Everything the rest of the way on paper should be winnable, but with the way that they've played these last couple of weeks, you've got to at least be on guard.
Yeah, there's no telling where this could end up. I do think that there are signs of issues. Outside of Ollie Gordon and Oklahoma State, I don't necessarily trust Alan Bowman. I'll never trust him as long as I watch quarterback play. But I mean, I didn't think Jason Bean could make the throws necessary to win you a football game in this game, and he did. I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting to see, because there were signs last week against UCF. We talked about it on our show earlier this week. Was that a sign of a team that's trending in the wrong direction? We kind of thought it was okay. Maybe it was just the hangover from the Texas win, the layoff, UCF being able to make some things happen. I don't know. There's still a lot to find out about this team. They don't look like a top 10 team. They don't necessarily look like a playoff team after that one. Can they get to the Big 12 title game? That's your next goal, and you got to hope that you can. But I mean, they've got to get back to the drawing board, and they've got to figure some things out, because the way they played today, some of it in conditions, they just didn't look like the same team with the same intensity that they were against Texas.
No.
And maybe that's when they peaked, is they got up for that Texas game. They threw everything at it. And now it's just kind of, we're starting to see, okay, maybe this is who this Oklahoma team really is. Now they could prove us completely wrong again and go out and beat Oklahoma State and run the table and get back to the Big 12 title game. That's fine. But they've got a lot of work to do. And they've got some toughness that they got to figure out, some physicality they got to figure out a better way to play in the cold, because it's going to get cold. You're going to go to Provo, and that's not going to be a warm weather game in the tropics. No, you're going to be playing in some cold weather. Next week in Stillwater, it could be a cold weather game. A week after that in Norman. I mean, potentially the best weather you might have the rest of the season is going to be when TCU come. Well, actually, no, that's TCU's coming to Norman. So maybe not. You might not have another great weather game. So you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to figure out how to throw the football when the weather and the conditions are not favorable. You've absolutely got to. Running an unbalanced game does not work for you as an Oklahoma football team. You've got to play balanced. You've got to be able to throw the ball, because the strength of this team is at the wide receiver position. That's where the depth is. Despite Jalil Farouk's fumble, despite, some drop passes, this is a team that has good playmakers on the outside. They've got to figure out a way to get them the ball. I mean, Nick Anderson's got 8 touchdowns this game. He only got 2 targets. You got to figure out a way to get these guys the football.
Adversity has struck for Oklahoma. The clock has not completely hit midnight, but now adversity is here, and let's see how Oklahoma responds. Last season, it was not a great response for Oklahoma once they got punched in the mouth. So this is the chance for Brent Venables to answer one other question, right? That now he's going to be the head coach to lead Oklahoma out of some in-season adversity. First time it's really hit this year. Let's see what happens. And, a bunch of people are kind of in different ways, John, asking the same question. Texan for Live, Josh and John, do you all think the Sooners will make the Big 12 title game? Andrew asks, do we bounce back and finish out the year strong, or do we roll over and look like this the rest of the season? I don't have anything outside of my heart of hearts and my gut of guts to tell you that there's evidence right now outside of maybe the beginning of the season in the Texas game that I do think Oklahoma is going to respond and finish the year strong. But do I have some legitimate concerns, both offensively and defensively? Absolutely. Do I have some concerns about the coaching staff, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach? Absolutely, I do. So am I just racing to take the bank account and say, all right, FanDuel, here's my Oklahoma's winning the Big 12 championship? No, not right now. But I do think that Oklahoma and Brent Venables are going to respond. I hope they do. And this is one of those turning point kind of moments for Brent Venables and company. All sorts of momentum. It feels like obviously some of that has been lost in this setback to Kansas. But let's see. Let's see what the answer looks like for Oklahoma, because the response last season, John, was not good.
Yeah, we'll find out. I mean, how this team responds, and they have no time to figure it out because they go to Stillwater next week and play an Oklahoma State team that's trending in a positive direction, unlike the Oklahoma Sooners. But that's going to do it for our post-game live edition of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for joining us and joining us in the chat over on YouTube. Thanks for subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all platforms and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to also let you know when new episodes drop. We'll talk more about this game over the next few days. Be here for our Monday night live show, 9 p.m. Central Time, as well as we continue to try to figure out where this Oklahoma Sooners team is heading and what it says about the Sooners down the stretch. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners and on Facebook, Locked On Sooners Podcast. But until next time, we're going to cry together. We'll figure it out. We're going to Oklahoma fan band together. He's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.